April 1969. Riverside International Raceway. The racing world was stunned. A Chevrolet Camaro, driven by Lloyd Ruby, shattered the qualifying record. But the true shock wasn't the car itself. It was the heart beating under its hood. A radical, almost mythical engine that few had ever seen. This was the Smokey Yunick Hemi Head 302, an experimental monster that could have rewritten Trans Am history, only to be buried by GM before it truly lived. In American racing lore, legends are plenty, yet few stories are as mysterious, controversial, and silenced as this one. Born from the genius of a rebellious mechanic, Smokey Yunick, the engine was too powerful to survive, and precisely because of that, it became legend. Today, we're going to uncover 10 shocking truths you never knew about the Smokey Yunick Hemi Head Camaro 1968, the car that could have changed the game forever. Number 10. Camaro Z/28, a car born to legally cheat. When you think of the Camaro Z/28, maybe you've seen one at a classic car show or heard stories about its high rev scream. What most people don't realize is that this car was never really built for the city streets. Chevrolet designed it to conquer the Trans Am Championship, a battlefield where brand pride was earned on the track. The Trans Am rules were strict. To compete, a manufacturer had to build at least 1,000 road-going cars with the same specs. With Ford's Mustang taking the lead, Chevrolet needed a loophole. Vince Piggins, a quiet but razor-sharp engineer, created the RPO Z/28 package. The name sounded dry, but the secret behind it was genius. At its heart was the 302 cubic inch engine, born from a 327 block and a 283 crankshaft, landing perfectly at the 5.0-liter displacement limit. On paper, it made 290 horsepower. But if you've ever heard it scream past 7,000 RPM, you know that number was just smoke and mirrors. In truth, it easily pushed 350 to 400 horsepower. Standing beside an early Z/28, the feeling is unmistakable. It's a race car disguised as a street car, stripped, raw, and built to win, not to cruise. Chevrolet didn't build a separate racer. They built 1,000 road cars that could turn into weapons at will. That was legal cheating, and anyone who witnessed it firsthand couldn't help but smile in admiration. Number 9. GM's racing ban. In 1963, GM officially issued a ban on racing. The reasons sounded respectable: concerns over safety, political pressure, and cost control. But anyone who followed motorsport knew this was more about corporate politics than engineering. On paper, GM stepped away from all forms of racing. In reality, the fire never died. Key figures like Vince Piggins, Roger Penske, and Smokey Yunick quietly received covert support. Chevrolet couldn't publicly sponsor teams, but they supplied parts, engineering data, and even under-the-table funding to independent outfits. It was this double game that allowed the Camaro to enter Trans Am at all. Outwardly, GM kept its cautious, safety-first image, but behind closed doors, Camaros were being prepared like weapons, slipping onto the track under a cloak of legitimacy. Number 8. Smokey Yunick, the rule bender. He wasn't the type of engineer to sit in an office with blueprints. As a former World War II B-17 pilot, Smokey carried the mindset of someone who had survived danger. To win, you had to be willing to bend the rules. His mantra was famous: if it ain't written, it ain't illegal. His Daytona Beach shop, known as the best damn garage in town, felt more like a laboratory than a garage. Inside, Smokey chased ideas no one else dared to try. He dipped body panels in acid to cut weight, reshaped windshields to cheat airflow, and even built a 1966 Chevelle so aerodynamically slippery that NASCAR banned it before it ever saw competition. The record speaks for itself: 57 NASCAR Cup Series wins, an Indy 500 victory, and 2 Mechanic of the Year awards. Yet numbers alone don't capture his legacy. What set Smokey apart was his rebellious spirit. He turned every loophole into an advantage, proving that racing wasn't only about horsepower and metal, but also about the bold imagination of the man holding the wrench. Number 7. Breaking over 30 records at Bonneville. Smokey brought 3 Camaros, each transformed in its own way. 2 of them used highly tuned 302 small blocks, pushing around 445 horsepower, nearly 50% more than the factory version. The third went even further: a 396 cubic inch big block, detuned to 540 horsepower for endurance runs. But the real surprise was how Smokey made the cars lighter. He dipped body panels in acid, shaving off weight while keeping the stock appearance. He lowered the chassis, laid back the windshield, and even smoothed drip rails so air could slip by with less drag. The results were astonishing. In 1967, Smokey's Camaros set more than 30 speed and endurance records, including sustained runs over 170 miles per hour. The big block car nearly touched 190 miles per hour, a staggering figure for something that still looked like a showroom Camaro. Number 6. Hemi Head 302 Porcupine Head. After Bonneville, Smokey Yunick and his team created something almost unthinkable: the Hemi Head 302, nicknamed the Porcupine Head for its angled, spiky valve layout. In the history of Chevrolet small blocks, nothing like it had ever existed. The first striking feature was its all-aluminum, semi-hemispherical heads. The spark plug was moved closer to the chamber center for more efficient combustion. Oversized valves, 2.05-inch intake and 1.94-inch exhaust, were shockingly large for a 302 cubic inch engine. Every detail was crafted like artwork: intake ports sculpted smooth, pistons forged to 12.5:1 compression, and a unique cross-ram manifold designed exclusively for the Hemi Head. On top sat twin Holley 585 CFM carburetors, gulping nearly twice the air of a standard Z/28 setup. But that radical design also came with contradictions. At high RPM, the engine roared to life, thriving only above 7,500 RPM, where it sounded feral and untamed. Yet at low revs, it struggled, lacking the torque that made other small blocks street-friendly. This wasn't an engine for grocery runs, it was a purebred weapon built to crush rivals on the track. Number 5, 501 horsepower. That figure came from a secret dyno session. Engineers present recalled the silence when the needle hit 501. A small block engine, naturally aspirated, no supercharger, no turbo, just radical design, had achieved something no one thought possible. But with that power came fear. Veteran test driver Lloyd Ruby climbed out after his first run, pale and shaken. He told Smokey, "This thing pulls like a jet fighter, but I swear it feels like it's going to blow sky high any second." The story spread quickly, giving the Hemi Head a reputation as both a marvel and a monster. To engineers, 501 horsepower was proof of genius. To GM executives, it looked like a liability: expensive, fragile, and dangerously close to exposing GM's shadow involvement in racing. What if NASCAR banned it outright? What if the press uncovered the truth? Number 4. One-off intake. If the porcupine head cylinder design was already bizarre, the one-off intake system of the Hemi Head 302 was even more astonishing. Instead of forcing air through rough passages, Smokey and his engineers sculpted oval-shaped runners smooth as glass. Every curve was calculated, so air would rush straight into the chambers at maximum velocity with minimal turbulence. Seen up close, it looked less like an engine part and more like a piece of mechanical art. On top sat twin Holley 585 CFM carburetors, delivering a combined 1,170 CFM, nearly double the airflow of a stock Z/28. Smokey also added his signature touches, ridges in the plenum to balance mixture across cylinders, and the iconic Smokey hats above the carbs, part air horn, part personal trademark. Of course, this system was never meant for street driving. No chokes, no heat crossover, not even a proper cold start. Number 3. A record stripped at the starting line. April 1969, Riverside International Raceway. The paddock buzzed with tension as Ford's Mustangs prepared to defend their dominance. Then Lloyd Ruby rolled out in Smokey Yunick's Camaro, fitted with the Hemi Head 302. On his very first qualifying lap, Ruby stunned everyone. The Camaro shattered the record, clocking a time so fast many thought the scoreboard was broken. The pits erupted. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others whispered that Chevrolet had finally unleashed a true weapon of mass destruction. I can almost picture that scene. Stunned faces, eyes darting around as if to ask, what on earth just happened? If you've ever seen a car perform far beyond expectation, you know that mix of awe and breathless excitement. But the celebration didn't last. NASCAR inspectors swarmed the car not to check the engine, but the chassis. The verdict: disqualified for acid-dipped panels, a lowered subframe, and other chassis violations. The irony? The Hemi Head itself, the very piece that terrified Ford, was technically legal. Number 2. GM killed it. After Riverside 1969, everyone knew the Hemi Head 302 was real. It wasn't just hype. It had the potential to make Ford tremble and rewrite Trans Am history. But precisely because it was too strong, too radical, GM killed it. To engineers, it was a masterpiece. But to executives, it was a problem. First, cost: aluminum heads, high compression pistons, magnesium valve covers, expensive, fragile, and nearly impossible to mass produce. Second, it lacked low-end torque, making it impractical for street buyers. And most crucially, GM still upheld its public racing ban. Releasing such a monster would have been like confessing their double game to the world. I can't help but think the GM brass weren't afraid the engine would fail. They were terrified it would work too well. If the Hemi Head dominated Trans Am, NASCAR would step in, Ford would cry foul, and the press might expose GM's hypocrisy. For the executives, reputational risk outweighed any horsepower number. Number 1. Only 3 engines. Once GM shut it down, the Hemi Head 302 project simply vanished. No press release, no farewell, just wooden crates sealed and pushed into storage. According to collector lore, only 3 complete engines were ever assembled, along with a handful of loose cylinder heads. That tiny number made them holy relics in American performance history. For decades, the Hemi Head lived on as rumor. Stories of magnesium valve covers, of an otherworldly roar only a few had heard. Many dismissed it as Smokey Yunick's tall tale, Yet every so often, a strange part surfaced from a forgotten garage or a quiet auction, like the past refusing to stay buried. To me, that scarcity is what turned the Hemi Head 302 into legend. If GM had built thousands, it might just be remembered as another high-performance variant. But because there were only 3, it became a what-if forever etched into Camaro history, an artifact of potential never realized. After going through 10 shocking truths about the 1968 Smokey Yunick Hemi Head Camaro, it stands as a symbol of boldness, of imagination that dared to push beyond boundaries, and also as a reminder that sometimes fear in the boardroom can kill a legend. For me, this story always raises one question. If GM had been brave enough to keep the Hemi Head 302 on the track, would Trans Am history have been different? Could the Camaro have entered the 1970s with an entirely different status? No one can ever answer that for sure, but that uncertainty is exactly why we still talk about it today. What about you? Do you see the Smokey Yunick Hemi Head 302 as a buried masterpiece, or just a bullet GM wisely dodged? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell, because there are plenty more shocking truth stories waiting for you to discover.